Welcome to the Career Musician Podcast. Today we have Ashley Jarmack, woodwind specialist. New York-born, Los Angeles-based, Ashley has worked with a list of who's who in the biz, including but not limited to Michael Bublé, Andrea Bocelli, Camila Cabello, Lionel Richie, and has made appearances on such shows as The Voice, American Idol, the American Music Awards, and League of Legends. The coolest part is I got to meet Ashley working on a project for Netflix called Maya and the Three, an animated series that will be coming out pretty soon. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that with our esteemed colleague, Tim Davies, who has also been a guest here on the Career Musician Podcast. Tim is a fantastic composer and arranger, and he connected the dots right here on this episode with Ashley Jarmack. And on that note, Ashley Jarmack, welcome to the Career Musician Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. No, I'm just saying you were just sitting here talking about Joe Rogan and how cool he is and how much you like his podcast. And then you were like, I don't know, Nomad, maybe your podcast isn't as cool as Joe's, but I'll have to see.
I mean, that's exactly what I said verbatim. Now you've told everybody what I've said. No.
The secret's out.
No, I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. So ironically, I love the story of how we met. And I think a lot of career musicians, we can all relate to this. Well, a lot of us can relate to this. We played together, never met. We were on the same session for many, many episodes of a TV show that's coming out on Netflix with amazing composer Tim Davies. Woo, Tim.
Yay, Tim.
And by the way, Tim has done the podcast.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. So you and I ended up doing 9 episodes together, countless cues.
Yes.
And we just didn't know it.
Countless cues.
And then at the rap party, we finally met.
Yeah, exactly. And I had no idea who you were. And actually, interestingly enough, we both were confused on how to get into the building together. So even better.
That's right. We're down there in West Hollywood.
We're like, where's the door?
Yeah. Those apartments are so chic down there. It's like, you can't even find the door.
No, exactly. So we showed up at the same time. That was quite fun.
That was funny. Yeah. It was great. All right. Well, good times. So you play the flute traditionally, but you play so many other instruments. Is that right? Can we start there maybe?
Yes. So actually my first instrument was saxophone.
Okay.
So, but I play saxophone, flute, clarinet, oboe, English horn, and a whole slew of world instruments. Or instruments from around the world, however you want to call them, yeah.
Right. So it's safe to say woodwinds. Mm-hmm. And then these other world instruments that are also kind of in the woodwind family oftentimes?
They're absolutely in the woodwind family. Okay. I could start listing all the flutes from India and China and Africa and Latin America, but it just gets to be too long of a list. So if I kind of say all-encompassing, like flutes from around the world or things like that. And I do actually play some other reeded instruments from around the world as well, but it's woodwinds, just woodwinds.
I like that. I've never heard it put like that, reeded instruments. So they're because oftentimes if you look around my studio, I have lots of guitar and guitar-like instruments from around the world. Mm-hmm. And I always say fretted instruments. Oh. So anything with strings and frets, I can pretty much play. And you're the same way. Anything with a reed or, in that family.
Or flutes,
Or flutes, whatever. I guess because flutes don't have reeds. Right. Anyway, you can play it all. I love it. So very cool. And in fact, I said to you when we met at the party, towards the end of the night, I said to you and Alex, I was like, you know what? We got to do a project. We'll figure something out to play together on, just to create fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. And actually, not to derail the conversation a little bit, or derail the conversation already, but actually that was one of the things I did actually learn during the pandemic is how important it is for me to create music, because my whole life I always played other people's music and I was fine with that. I really was. And with the time that we had during the pandemic, I started experimenting with things that I had never had the time to do before. And it was just so fulfilling in a way that I didn't know I needed. So, yeah. It was
so true. I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm going to back up to the first question, but
sure.
I want to address this while we're here.
Yeah.
I've learned over the years that if I'm not creating music in addition to performing other people's music, I will shrivel up and die. Like, if I'm not creating something on a regular basis, I literally get so irritable. I get anxious, I get depressed, I get sad. And the word irritable is really applicable, because I just find myself like being miserable if I'm not creating. And then I find if I sit down, and I've written a bunch of songs and a bunch of compositions. If I sit down and play 3 or 4 of my songs, all of a sudden it's a purge, it's a cleanse. This cathartic thing comes over me, and I'm like, okay, I can breathe now, and I can move on to the next thing. Or if I get down in my studio control center and I create a cue, a 90-second cue, you know, an underscore piece, I'm like, wow, I feel better. You know, take 90 minutes or 3 hours and just do that. Then all of a sudden I'm like, now I'm normal again.
Yeah, just taking some time to do what I wanted to do,
Right.
what was making me feel fulfilled. Not that the other jobs and other things don't make me feel fulfilled, but it was just fulfilling in a different way. And especially one of the things I started to tinker with was arranging and playing with sound colors, that putting together sound colors that people never combine. So all these instruments from around the world, I wanted to see, well, what would it sound like if I put this flute from China and this flute from Africa and then this Irish whistle and then, I don't know, like going on and on, you know, something from India. If I put that all together, what textures are you going to get? That was a really good experience for me to have.
Right.
Was
right.
to arrange and tinker and play with all these sound colors, because now I can actually talk to composers or whoever wants to listen about it. I can articulate a lot more clearly, like, well, what will work together and why it works together. And now I even have examples to show them of, well, do you want this texture or that texture, or this has a mysterious sound, or this can sound like this, or, you know, on and on.
That's brilliant. And that's why I'm so focused on us doing something together, because I do the same thing with all my stringed instruments.
Yeah.
And, you know, what's it like to put a banjo with an oud? You know,
yeah,
or what's
yeah.
it like to put a cavaquinho with, you know, flamenco thing, you know, so
yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we can definitely touch on some crazy things. So we got to do that in the future.
Okay.
But you just said something else. You said, then you use those as little sound bites to show composers as examples. And let's talk about how you do that, because a lot of people have trouble putting together their body of work and keeping it archived and organized and accessible, right?
Yeah.
So what's the way that you found that works best for you?
The short answer is on social media. It's about thinking about who your audience is and getting those people to see your content, rather than having 100 million views and going viral, because that's not always what you want either.
Right. It's getting the material into the right hands.
Exactly.
So that you can get work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's actually, I think that's perhaps one of the best uses of social media.
I agree.
That I've heard, you know, and it's great. I love when I talk to guests such as yourself that do that. It's brilliant. I've started doing that over the years here and there. I haven't been consistently doing it, and every time I talk to somebody like you, I'm like Homer Simpson. I'm like, oh, I gotta do that. What's wrong? You know, so.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's different for everybody. I was slowly doing it before the pandemic, and I ramped it up during the pandemic.
Smart. I think it's extremely appropriate and befitting for you, because your set of skills and instruments are so unique. Not everybody does what you do, let's face it, right? So one of the rules of marketing is to find a niche of a niche of a niche, right? And then hone in on the niche and just do that, instead of trying to be everything to everybody. And clearly you have done that. You are this niche market within a niche. The woodwind family, the flute family, the world instrument, taking it a step further.
Right.
It really puts the nail in the coffin, so to speak. Sorry for the horrible pun there, but the thing is, it's working because your work is film and TV music, and that's what you're doing. And now you're telling me, you walk in the door today, we're making small talk, you're like, yeah, I'm working on this project, I just finished this film, I'm getting ready to do 123 cues on this, I have to do 30 sessions for this, you know, whatever it is. It's like, what? It's impressive. And again, I always tie it back to what the message is here as the career musician, and it's what I've always run my whole life and business modeled after my whole life, right? Is building a sustainable career, empowering musicians with strategies for a sustainable career.
Yeah.
Not just saying, oh yeah, I got on this tour, I'm badass. I did this session, I'm badass. guess what? When that tour session is over, what are you going to do now? And then the other side, the flip side is the people that always put themselves down, that self-deprecation where they just don't think they're good enough. I would like to see the whole professional music community come somewhere to a middle ground. Because we did, I think it started in January, February of 2021. And Tim Davies called us both, and the singer, who was amazing as well.
She's amazing.
I can't remember her name.
But she sounded so good.
Oh, she was so dope. And it was the three of us that really comprised the voice of the characters in this TV show.
Yes.
And Tim was the overall composer and orchestrator and conductor to bring it all together.
He was the ringleader.
Right. Great way. and he said that to us in several emails and communications. The three of you guys, you have these voices. We're gonna string them together. It's gonna be amazing. And it came out beautiful. Then he threw the rap party. We go meet. We talk, and we're talking to you and Alex. And Alex brought a beautiful bottle of whiskey. I love that, by the way. It was so tasty. And then you were telling me, hey, at some point because you learned that I was playing guitar, and then you learned about my career, and then you were like, hey, let me ask you about this because I'm kind of nervous about this situation. And I don't even remember what I said to you, but whatever I said, obviously it was good. Okay.
Well, actually, interestingly enough, when we first started talking, after the initial, we met, we couldn't find the front door, we were trying to get up to the party. Okay, so after all of that, we kind of parted ways. And you actually, I think, were talking to Alex.
Yeah.
And you and Alex started talking.
Yes.
And then about this certain topic, and then you and I started talking about it a little bit later.
Gotcha.
And it was really interesting. But imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. Oh, right.
Oh, is that not what you were going to mention?
That's what it was. No, that was it.
Oh, okay.
I just forgot exactly how it all transpired, but that's it.
Yeah. So I guess you and Alex, you were talking to Alex about it for some reason. I wasn't part of that conversation. Yeah. But then all of a sudden you started talking to me about it. I shouldn't say all of a sudden, but later, you and I started talking about it, and it couldn't have been more perfect timing because I was currently feeling that at that moment about...
Right. And that's what you divulged to me.
Yes,
yes.
Exactly.
So look, I talked about this with my wife. I talked about it with all my colleagues and peers and, all my friends over the years, imposter syndrome. And I think it is directly or indirectly related to performance anxiety, because at some point in our lives, and I'm just relegating it to being a session musician right now.
Sure.
As a session musician, it's our job to do anything on the spot immediately without preparation.
Yes.
So we prepare our whole lives to be able to do that.
Right.
So we get called to do that, right? And that imposter syndrome comes from that. We have to be chameleons. So John Powell said it best. I was working with John Powell on Ferdinand maybe 3-4 years ago.
Okay.
And on a lunch break, I said, John, would you mind if I interview you for my podcast? He's like, sure, let's do it. So at the end of the interview, he says, listen, he said, my dad gave me these famous words of wisdom. You know the old adage, jack of all trades, master of none?
Of course, yeah.
Right. He said, his dad said, jack of all trades, master of some. And he said, you have to know how to do everything. And of course, in your bag of tricks, you're going to have 3 or 4 things that you are just the expert at. But then you might have 10 other things that you're not the expert at, but you can do pretty well, or you can dabble in them. And he said, that's how you have to look at it. And I literally had a sigh of relief, and I said it on the podcast. You can hear it. I forget which episode it was. It was early on. I said, John, thank you so much. I was like, oh, I can breathe now. It's like he gave me the freedom, the right, the approval to not feel like an imposter. And that was my whole point to you.
No, and it's one of those things. So you play lots of fretted instruments,
right?
As
and you play lots of reeded instruments,
reeded or winds.
I
play lots of winds, and it's really tough juggling all of them.
Yes,
and I love what I do.
Right.
Because I love experimenting with so many different sound colors and so many different instruments and styles. Like there's so much beautiful music, beautiful color sounds all over the world that a lot of times people never even hear or don't even know that they're hearing it, like in a movie soundtrack or something like that. They don't even know that that's what it is that they're listening to. And so if I was to only play one instrument, I would actually get very frustrated. Because when I was in college studying one instrument primarily and all the time in the practice room, no matter what I did, it didn't matter how many hours I put in, and you have good days, you have bad days, I was never good enough. And you can say that now, even being diversified, but I was so much more frustrated than I am now, playing so many different instruments. And if this instrument doesn't feel good that day, well, that's okay, switch to another one. And not only that, I've been surprised what I've learned from playing one instrument, like say the Turkish ney, where all of a sudden I had like an epiphany because I was trying to get a better sound, a better tone, and I was experimenting with my embouchure and the direction of my air and all the stuff. And all of a sudden I did something and I was like, holy moly. That was, all of a sudden my sound completely changed, and then I had to try it on saxophone and on flute and clarinet. So it's not even just transferring to like another flute of some sort, but it transfers across to these other instruments. And it's these little discoveries that I'm making playing all these different instruments actually I think has made me a better musician overall, because sometimes when you study one instrument with one teacher or even a couple teachers, there tends to be specific schools of thought that you follow.
That's right.
And it's kind of like you do it this way and that person's wrong.
And that's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Very traditional, old school way of thinking. Yeah.
Exactly. So with me, that's kind of all gone out the window.
Yeah, it
because
has to.
I've had one teacher say, when I was studying just regular, I don't want to say regular, but sax, flute, clarinet, oboe, and I'm not going to say which teacher it was because but for one of the instruments, my teacher was saying, your rib cage expands when you breathe. It expands like, all the muscles and tendons and stuff in there. It's expanding, and so that's what you should be focusing on. And another teacher on another instrument was like, "What? No, your ribs, they're bones. They don't move. You have to really focus on your belly, and your belly should really be protruding when you're breathing." And it's not that you couldn't kind of combine both those things, but the rib cage was kind of the sticking point. And I remember I was studying with both of them at the same time. This was in LA, and I got a little confused, and I told one what the one said and one what the other one said, and they were both like, "That's really interesting." And they didn't. They didn't negate. Well, they kind of negated it, but so they kind of negated what each other said. But I just kind of had to take what they were sharing and see what worked for me.
That's right.
And so that's what's been so cool about playing so many different instruments is again, I think it's made me a more open, I don't want to say more open-minded, but it's made me open-minded and to all sorts of different concepts and ideas. And man, I can make so many different shapes with my face to blow across these instruments now. You wouldn't believe
wow. That's so interesting you say that. I love that take with the different teachers. When I was coming up studying guitar in New York and South Florida, I made it a point to study with as many different teachers as I could. Classical, jazz, rock,
right,
fusion, pop, funk, R&B, whatever it was, because I wanted all of those different opinions and perspectives. I do think it's a detriment to the student when the teacher is so adamant about only one course of study. I think that's just really damaging.
Well, I think it can work sometimes if you have a really good teacher-student pairing. Yeah. But people learn differently. There's so many different ways to absorb information and to actually share that information. And so you could have 10 people talking about, I don't know, how to play the G minor chord on guitar. And maybe this is a bad example because I don't play guitar, but like they could maybe have different positionings, or they could have different ideas of what voicings are the best, or what to do with your fingers, or how to hold your wrist or your hand, or what to do with the rest of your body. And they might all have slightly different ideas of what is best, because maybe that does work for them.
I'm so glad you said that. No, this is perfect. When I was probably in 9th, grade, maybe 8th, 9th grade.
Yeah.
I asked one of my guitar teachers, I said, I learned how to play a G major chord in open position, but how do you play a G minor? And he couldn't tell me.
Oh, specifically G minor?
He couldn't tell me. We call them cowboy chords or open chords.
Yeah,
chords within the first 3 frets. All open. You use open strings with some fretted strings.
Okay.
And you learn like a D major and a D minor, an A major and an A minor, an E major and an E minor.
Yeah.
But when you get to G, you never learn the G minor. You just learn a G. And I'm like,
really?
yo, teach. His name was Mr. Eck. Big shout out to Mr. Eck. I don't know. He'll never listen to this, whatever. But I was like, Mr. Eck.
He might. You never know.
Yeah, there you go. How do you play a G minor in the open position? And he was like, nobody's ever asked me that. I don't know. I have to let me look at this. So I guess the point is we have to explore everything.
Well, no one person has the full picture.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's part of... I don't know. I almost wish that at a university level, it was encouraged for students to learn different instruments within their family. And I don't just mean you're a flute player and learn other flutes, but I'm talking about you're a flute player, learn some other woodwinds, for a year or something.
Yeah.
And some people listening to this might be like, oh my God, how can you say that? Because specifically with flute, there's a lot of flutists or people who play flute, they might be doublers as well, that were like, oh, I tried oboe, but no, it was messing with my embouchure. Or I tried to play the ney, but oh no, like it messed with my embouchure and I couldn't sacrifice that. Like the traditional flute embouchure specifically.
It's more of a purist in that regard.
Yeah, but these people that I'm thinking of, they're not all like straight flutists. Some of them do play other instruments as well. So don't come for me, whoever's listening for this. You guys can openly disagree. Like it's completely fine. It just for me, I wish that there was a little bit more exploration of just creating sound in different ways, because you never know what you're going to learn. Hi, I'm Ashley Jarmack, and I'm a career musician.
Binge previous seasons of the Career Musician Podcast and subscribe for all new episodes.
Subscribe to The Career Musician on Apple Podcasts.
Gosh, that is the creed of every composer, producer, music maker, creator. That's what we live by, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I just feel like so many people, well, I guess we're kind of just going in circles now. I'm just going to repeat what we said, which is so many people are just stuck on, like, this is the one way you have to do it, and it's only this way.
Right.
And I guess the reason I'm bringing this up too, or why I'm bringing it up again, is because one of the struggles I actually had, and I didn't know I had it, was my jaw was very tight. I had a lot of tension in my jaw when I played for years. Really? Like for at least all of my 20s. Okay? And this was including college. And I remember being in college and some of the other musicians, they're like, oh, like my reeds never work. Like all these reeds are bad, or the mouthpiece, or it was always something. They're searching for better equipment. And looking back on it, I'm like, clearly there was a lot of tension in the shoulders, in the neck, in the jaw. And so it was actually, for me, when I was referencing the aha moment with the Turkish ney, that was actually my jaw. I actually experimented with just opening this back joint. And by the way, I didn't realize that there was tension, because I didn't know that there was. It was just how I had always played. So I had opened it up, or I was experimenting, and I remember relaxing this back here, and I was like, wait a minute.
Wow.
Wait a minute. And then I went to all these other instruments. And I mean, you can ask some of my close friends, because I was calling them up being like, oh my goodness. And they were very nice. And they would listen, and they're like, cool. And then some of them would actually go and experiment with some of the stuff that I was sharing. But that was just one that, for me personally, like that was something that, had I not wanted to pick up this instrument with a completely different embouchure. By the way, anybody who doesn't know what a ney is, or a Turkish ney, there are many different types of ney from different countries. You actually play, there's two different types. The type I'm talking about, you actually play with a whistle like embouchure.
Wow.
So you have to, kind of pucker your lips.
Purse your lips a little
Yeah,
bit.
purse your lips in that way. So it's not like playing saxophone, flute, clarinet, oboe, like anything else.
Wow.
And yes, there is, for anyone out there listening, yes, there is another ney as well that's even trickier to play. Arguably, that has a totally different embouchure. It's because it was such a new embouchure for me to experiment with. Such a new embouchure that I had to try things. I was experimenting with things that maybe I had never experimented with before, with the chamber of my mouth and how my jaw was positioned, how my lips were positioned. So that, I think, was what partially led to that kind of epiphany about all this tension being held here and my neck and my shoulders. And I think a lot of people do hold a lot of tension in their neck and shoulders and jaw. I mean, that's not uncommon.
As
but
you're talking about, I'm sitting here like stretching. I'm like,
I know.
Let me get that tension out. It's so true. I think musicians are not. You're right. Human beings, we hold the tension, neck and shoulders. Again, I'm sorry to correlate everything you say to what I do, but it's all
we're
about
having
me.
we're having a conversation. That's part of it.
It's so true. Same thing with hands when you're playing guitar. The wrists, the elbow joints, and even some of the shoulder, you're taught from an early point on to be relaxed, no tension, and to get the fingers to move fluidly. You can't be tense. You can't grab the plectrum or the pick and be tense and like, I'm going to do this. And if you do that, it's just going to slow you down in the long run, and it can even create more muscular issues.
But see, this is the kicker, is that you're told to relax. You're told not to be tense.
You weren't.
But how do you know that person really, because we're not superimposing ourselves on someone else's body. So sometimes,
how do you know if they're actually adhering?
Yeah, especially especially here in the jaw, it's
hard to tell.
You can't really see it. It's like,
yikes.
Think of vocalists, for instance.
Oh, right.
How do you explain what's going on in here? They've because you can't. Yes, you can touch and feel your throat and different things on the outside, but you can't stick your hand down someone's throat to figure out what their vocal cords are doing.
Right.
I mean, you shouldn't be doing that, at least.
And you can't see an X-ray of your jaw, right? I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So by explaining, and by the way, I didn't think that I had tension when I played. So I've just been doing a lot of thinking about this because of my own journey in music, and I think that a lot of people, they just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
So you can say, I am relaxed. Even, you could, you could say, I am relaxed. And then you watch them and they're like this with their shoulders, when they're playing or something. Or how can you tell, how relaxed the muscles in the back of their neck are? It's all connected. Everything in your body is connected. And so many people are focused on the external, as in, okay, how fast can I move my fingers to play this lick or this line? Or, they're focused on the end product and their instrument that they're playing, as that is the thing that's creating sound. And there's many students that I've told, and just, I was going to say people in general, but no, I think it's mostly students that I've said this to, where I'll pick up, say, the clarinet. I'll say, here, this is your clarinet. And I'm like, this is an instrument, right? Or this is your instrument. And they're like, yeah, that's my instrument. And I say, it's actually not. And I put it on the table and I said, that will never make sound unless you do something to it to make it make sound, essentially.
Your body's your instrument.
Yeah, so your body is the instrument.
Yes.
And this clarinet, think of it as more of a way to, it's like, did you ever have one of those microphones when you were a kid that you would yell into and it kind of echoed or something? It was one of those weird.
It was so cool.
It was cool. But it kind of distorted your voice, or when you sing into a fan or something like that,
Sure.
It distorts your voice. And I say, think of these instruments as a way to manipulate and distort the air that is coming out of your body. But every single thing that you're doing with your body affects that.
Wow.
And that's I usually say that to kids because they're 10 and they don't want to
Yeah.
They don't want to listen to, like, why are you talking about your diaphragm?
They don't want to slow down.
Why are you talking about your belly? Why are you talking about your, how I'm sitting? Like, it doesn't matter. This is the saxophone. I'm blowing into it. Like, it's fine. And so that's a lot of times how I explain it, is it's like, this flute, this clarinet will never, ever make sound on its own.
That's great.
It's all you.
Reminds me of a great story. The Chet Atkins, the famous guitar player, I don't know if you know who he is. Incredible genius, master of the instrument. He's since passed. Somebody came up to him at the end of a show and said, "Hey man, Chet, man, that guitar just sounds great, man. What an amazing, sound. It just sounds great." And he puts it on the stand and he goes, "Oh yeah, how does it sound now?"
Yeah, I like that.
Because
actually.
It doesn't mean shit. The instrument doesn't do it.
Yeah.
It's you, the
it's
human being, that finesses those sounds out of that instrument.
Yeah.
So along to support your
exactly.
point.
And I think a lot of people, like, conceptually, like, I mean, we say this and people were like, well, yeah, of course. But it's one thing to subconsciously, like, think about that.
Yeah.
Or to know that, subconsciously know that, I guess, and to actively think about it.
Right.
Because, I mean, gosh, when I was growing up playing music, and even in college, I was like, ugh, why are they telling us to do, like, these breathing exercises? Like, why do I have to do this? Or, like, I just want to practice my skills. I want to get faster, whatever.
And now that you're doing 123 cues in a week,
goodness.
now you know why.
Oh, my gosh.
Now you know why they made you do that.
No.
Right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, because it helps my performance.
Oh, yeah. I thought
You know what I'm saying?
I thought you meant play the scales faster and faster.
No,
I was
I'm saying when they teach you the whole,
Yes.
science behind it.
Yeah.
The biology of how it all comes together.
Yeah, and I actually, growing up, I don't really remember. So actually, I didn't have private lessons for most of my life growing up. And, so college was really kind of my first, like, regular studying with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But I sometimes... I don't want to say, like, I have a hard time with someone saying just do this with no explanation, but I know that sometimes it helps me to know why they're telling me to do something. And if they say to me when I'm 18, if a teacher says to me when I'm 18, well, you have to take care of your body because, like, when you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s, it's like for the longevity of your health and blah, blah, blah. When I'm 18, like, everything that bounces off of me, we're like rubber and glue. It's like everything bounces off of us, and we're fine.
And when you're 18, you never think you're going to be 50. You're like, what the hell? That's old people. I'll never be. Yeah,
exactly. That's like ancient.
Yeah,
it's ancient.
It's prehistoric.
It's prehistoric. Yeah, that's right. And so that never really. So thinking about my health long term never really. Resonated. Not that I'm not a healthy person, but just thinking about it in that respect.
I get it.
And injuries, related to playing music, I never that just didn't resonate with me. And so as I've gotten older, my desire to really create as beautiful a sound as I can on all these instruments, not that I didn't want to do that when I was younger, but has the continued desire for that has kind of led me down that path to finally realize, wait, I'm the instrument. And to think about it that way. And I'll tell you, so many kids, when I tell them that, they're just like, what? Like, it's clear that, like, a little light bulb goes off. Now, it doesn't mean that they do what I say, but they at least understand, and I can see that they're thinking about it a little bit more.
Now I want to know, how the heck did you come out to LA and pursue a career and establish yourself as an LA, top session cat, doing a lot of big film and TV and album work? Because so many listeners have the same aspirations, and we all know it's not easy.
I do want to say thank you. That's very generous of you to say. I'm a big studio cat. I think I'm a little kitten right now, probably. Okay, so
LA studio kitten, whatever you prefer.
Yeah,
but still.
Yeah,
you're in the LA studio scene at a very high level. You would not be working with Peter Rotter and Tim Davies if you weren't.
Thank you.
And myself, of course.
And yourself. I mean, of course.
No, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, thank you. So what was your question? How did I get out to LA?
Yeah, how did you do this? How did you say, okay, I'm going to go to LA, I'm going to pursue it, and then all of a sudden, bam, you find yourself in the mix?
Can I tell another short story instead of a straight answer?
Please.
Is that okay? Okay. So all growing up, I played music, and I just kept doing. I wouldn't even say it was my passion. It was just I was good at it. It was just something that, and I was good at it. By the way, a lot of people talk about talent and like, oh, you're so talented. I was good at it because I practiced a lot.
That's right.
Because I was a very self-motivated kid.
Sacrifice, man.
Yeah, so it's like, when you're a kid and they say practice 20 minutes a day, and but we actually had a sheet that you had to write the amount of time you practiced, and my mom had to sign off on it, and she wasn't going to sign off on it unless I actually practiced.
I love it.
So you better believe I practiced every day. Yeah, I was so proud of myself. I'm like, I practiced on Christmas, I practiced on Easter, I practiced
for
on
you. See?
Oh yeah, I practiced
4th of July.
Everything. I practiced on all the holidays. I remember like having those thoughts. I was like, yes, I got it in this day.
That's
whatever.
Right. That's awesome.
So I was a very I had a lot of self-motivation and internal drive as a kid. And so I think that that's kind of why I stuck with music. It was a community like within the school that I sort of belonged, at least. I played music, so I kind of belonged there. And then as I got older and I was in high school, it's like, okay, I'm going to go into music, but I'm not from Los Angeles. So I didn't really have a concept of what I could do other than be a music teacher at a school, not even a private teacher, because I didn't have, like I said, I didn't have private lessons growing up. So I was like, well, I don't think I really want to be a teacher, but maybe I'll go to college and study music and I could do that. Because again, my first instrument was saxophone. So even the idea of being an orchestral musician in an orchestra, that was completely off the radar for me. Wow. I had no concept of that either. So I got to college and I took a couple of education classes and decided, by the way, I have so much respect for all the teachers out there that, teach, pre-K all the way through high school and beyond. Yeah. But I very quickly realized that was not for me after taking up a couple of classes. Wow. And I became a performance major. And my second degree was actually in Spanish and Portuguese because I love languages, and that's a whole other story.
Wow.
But
how many languages do you speak?
English.
English, Spanish, Portuguese?
So I can do conversational Spanish and Portuguese. Portuguese I have to kind of brush up on a little bit. And Spanish kind of comes and goes. I need to, once I kind of get going for a little bit, then I'm fine. And then I started learning some Mandarin, but that's a whole other thing.
Wow.
I really like languages a lot.
That's cool.
I love languages. But when I was in college, I still didn't really know like my significance in saying that I was studying languages is I was like, well, maybe I'll go into translation and interpretation because I still don't really know like what are you going to do with a performance major in classical saxophone. I still wasn't really sure what I was going to do in music if I was going to continue down that path. And then in 2006, I made the Disney All-American College Band out here in Los Angeles. Have you heard of that band?
No, but that's pretty cool. If anything Disney.
Okay, so I just started like subbing in a couple like little rehearsal bands, so big bands, here and there. And I actually just worked at 2 music stores. And I when I moved out here, I told myself I'm going to take 1 week, kind of acclimate myself, orient myself to LA and where everything is. And then first thing I did was actually just start applying. And this was after I got my degree, okay? My bachelor's degree. I think I do want to say something to all the people out there listening who maybe get their degrees and they're like, oh, I'm not going to take this sort of job because I have this degree and I'm, it's like beneath me or whatever people think. It's below my pay grade. But yeah, I mean, I moved out to LA and I got 2 retail jobs at music stores. And one of those jobs I kept for 8 years, by the way. And it's not that I needed it ultimately, but I was working there like 8 hours a week. And so what happened was I worked at these 2 stores. Within 6 months, I started getting students. I was teaching for a while, but that's the story of how I got out to LA and then how I kind of started in LA. So it's not like I started playing music immediately and I was in scene so the one thing that could have made my life easier is maybe if I did actually get my master's out here, because then you're kind of with a pod of other musicians, you meet other people, maybe you start subbing on musicals or big bands or orchestras, whatever it is that you're doing. So I didn't actually have any of those connections. at all. And the one lady I knew, I was really fortunate because even though she worked some of the top jobs in LA, she also kind of worked across the map and did a lot of other stuff like college musicals or whatever. So at some point, she started having me sub for her a little bit here and there, just a little bit. And I started to kind of slowly meet people.
Yet here you are, an A-list session kitten in the scene, doing the jobs, raking in some bucks, playing some killer charts, sight reading your ass off, playing anything that's put in front of you, playing a plethora of different instruments from all around the globe. I'd say you're crushing it.
But
and you can't see this sitting on my desk here. What do you call these things? These are some toys that my dear friend got me from South America. What do you call these?
Yeah, these are actually I believe they're from Ecuador, because they look like pan flute, or they are like pan flutes.
Pan flutes, yeah.
But the style of pan flute, I forget if they're called rondador or ronadador. Like, I'm forgetting if there's an extra vowel in there or not. So please forgive me, anybody who's listening.
But it's really hard to make a sound come out of them.
Yeah,
it's not easy, but
yeah, these are.
All right, these are more like. These are more like. Oh, there you go.
There you go. You're getting some sounds. There.
That's awesome. I've never made it sound that good. Ashley Jarmack right here on The Career Musician, playing my souvenirs from South America that my dear friend Camille got me. Shout out to Camille, and shout out to you, Ashley Jarmack, and everybody else that we mentioned. Thank you so much for being our guest. This is awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Now, where can people find you? On IG?
Yeah, so you can just find me under my name, Ashley Jarmack, on Instagram, or at YouTube under Ashley Jarmack. I'm also on TikTok.
There you go.
So, but I would say if you're really interested to see all these instruments and hear what I'm talking about, Instagram is the best place to find me.
And I strongly encourage everybody listening to go check out Ashley's channels because you're crushing it. I mean, just love the stuff. It's engaging. You will fall down Ashley's rabbit hole of watching her play instrument after instrument for many minutes, if not hours on end. So beware. But it's a fun process.
Well, I had fun making them, mostly.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and let's do it again sometime.
Indeed.